So, it gives me great pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker. I've got to pronounce it again. Associate Professor Stefano Pampanin. He's an Associate Professor in Structural Design and Earthquake Engineering in the Department of Civil and Natural Resources Engineering here at the university. He joined us in 2002. He's currently, interestingly, the President of the New Zealand Society for Earthquake Engineering. After his structural study in Pavia, he studied for a master's degree in structural engineering at the University of California, San Diego, also on an earthquake fault, and then a PhD in earthquake engineering from the Technical University of Milan, also on an earthquake fault. In the past 15 years, he's been dedicating a significant effort in the research and development, codification and practical implementation, as well as knowledge dissemination of innovative solutions for the seismic design. There's no full stops in this sentence. Well, he's been doing all that for seismic design of low-damage structural systems, as well as for the seismic retrofit of existing structures. He's acted as an external consultant and peer reviewer for the actual implementation of several damage-resisting solutions based on jointed ductile connections in reinforced precast concrete buildings. You'll have seen him in the news. He'll have explained this. Following the February earthquake in Christchurch, Stefano played an active role in the recovery and post-earthquake investigation activities. He led the recovery project, Seismic Performance of RC Buildings, under the Natural Hazard Platform of Building and Housing, and was part of the expert panel of the Department of Building and Housing, investigating the collapse of critical buildings and reporting to the Canterbury Earthquake Royal Commission of Inquiry. We're very pleased to have Stefano talk to us tonight. His talk is entitled, What If New Buildings Could Be Safer and Affordable? Please welcome, in the time-honoured way, Associate Professor Stefano Pampanin.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen, for the kind introduction. And I should say that she's been given quite a tough task because that was the bio, a technical bio for the World Conference of Earthquake Engineering, where 3,000 engineers were listening. So joint ductile connection was something that you don't know what it is. At the end of the day, you're going to be a master of it. So first of all, thanks for coming. I know that coming in the evening is not an easy task, but also this is going to be quite a marathon, not only today. I've been told that there are 39 episodes of these What If Wednesdays, and I know that you're trying to go for 37 out of 39, in which case I've been told that you're going to get a coffee card. So you're not going to get a coffee for free, you're going to get just a shot for free, okay, on the top of your flat white or whatever it is. But having said that, I'm very curious to know if someone, and how many, have already listened to my presentation 2 years ago on the earthquake series. Good. Reason why, I went back to check exactly what I said and what I didn't say. And then I asked if I was going to be recorded, and I was hoping that they were saying no. Unfortunately, they said yes. I would really like to have a closed door where I can say what I want. Journalists around, please reveal yourself. Really? Okay, that's great. So we're going to have an embargo on the video if I say something strange. Don't ask strange questions, please. Ask what you think, and then we will going to see if we can answer. Now, this picture here, I've been using this first slide really at the World Conference on Earthquake Engineering, and today the idea is to give you a similar type of information, but in an easier technical manner, and we're going to have also an experimental test, which is a very expensive test that we've been preparing for a few years. It took us a few hours this afternoon to make it happen. If it doesn't work, it's because it's a cheap experimental test, but it did work just a few hours ago. The first one, unfortunately, the first slides are going to be a sort of a déjà vu. You would like not to be reminded that the best way to reach my country, first country, to my second country is to follow the troubles. And that's something that people are now aware of. You do know what the Pacific Ring of Fire is, don't you? You do know that unfortunately we are sitting, Shaky Islands had a name. It was quite interesting that after the earthquake, September one, and then after February again, there were some people, journalists, in a nice way, saying, can you believe that researchers at Canterbury University were looking at low damage technology even before knowing that Christchurch was a seismic city? Say, I came all the way from here, I knew it. Probably you were here, you didn't know it, but look at these cars. There are quite few of them, and if you were able to see the number of earthquakes happening in New Zealand in the last few decades, you will see a lot of activities over here, quite a plenty over there, and all the way around the Alpine fault and the scars around the Alpine fault, plenty of activities. Unfortunately, this is something that now you know by heart, and you will be able almost now to guess where the next fault is going to be, with probably equal probability of being lucky or unlucky than what scientists can do. It's not true. But as you know, forecasting an earthquake is not predicting an earthquake. So being able to say that there are unknown faults over here is actually the problem. We do know that there are many unknown faults of the nature of the February ones. How many unknown faults are there, we don't know. And that's the problem. We should be able to design buildings in a way that for how much we don't know, we should be able to get through that unknown big ones, which is not only the Alpine fault, in a nice manner. You do know about September. You know that September was a lucky one, in a way. Because September happened at 4:30 a.m. and not during lunchtime, September did not have the hundreds of victims that it could have had. Because September happened, the one that we did not want to happen, did not cause those thousands of victims that it could have had, because September took down the potential, what we call the very well-known killers. Unreinforced masonry buildings are well known to be potential killers, regardless, so since quite a while, and we're going to discuss since how long humankind knew that unreinforced masonry buildings are not the best possible buildings, potentially, for seismic resistance. That's why they've been banned in New Zealand since 1935. After the 1931 earthquake in Napier. So what we get out of it, out of this monstrosity, if you wish, is a humongous laboratory, a very big laboratory downtown that represents a big shaking table test, if you wish, with soil structure interaction, with soil condition, liquefaction, full-scale testing, 3D, all degree of freedom of motions is something unique. That test costed quite a bit. They say $30 billion. It's not true. It's going to be more. And you're going to listen that we are now writing a special issue with the American friends and colleagues, and the special issue is mentioning $10 billion. I said, how far away did people mention 10 billions? You know that now, what is the number now? 30. Do you think it's including all indirect cost, business interruption, and your insurance? Has your insurance in your house gone down or up? Because mine has gone up. And my house, apart from some leaking and flooding and everything else in the roof, is quite okay. So I still do not understand why everyone, I do, but people do not remember that we are all paying for quite a few years for what has happened, regardless of us having been affected or not affected directly in our building. So when people think about how much it would cost to, I would try not to divert too much, to strengthen existing buildings, or how much would it cost not to, I can tell you that I'm sure that my insurance will not go down in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Have you ever seen the petrol cost going down significantly? No, the insurance will not go down. It will stay there, and it's going to be a big payment that all the community is going to do because of the earthquake, regardless of how much have been affected. Unreinforced masonry buildings are not behaving nicely during an earthquake. We know that they are not meant to be, because at the end of the day, they are made of many single individual elements, many bricks. And bricks, if not connected, they tend to just spoil out. The easier way to get, the most typical way of getting a reinforced masonry building to fall is to have the facade to be pushed out. And that's not something that we've been learning under the Christchurch earthquake. It has been there for a while. Avoiding a facade to spoil out, which is not called full collapse of a building, but is going to kill people, and unfortunately it did. Fixing that problem is not a major deal. We're going to see how can that be done, and how we can use new technology or old technology to think about a better and safer city or nation. Now, the novelty, in a way, the surprise, the shocking surprise was for the international community, not only national-wise, to observe modern buildings, 1980 plus, quite recent buildings, to be damaged to an extent that they had to be retrofitted. You have not seen this one because it's yet not published, so now you can see it. This is PwC. There's no need to say. PwC, after the earthquake, plenty of pictures like that. The ceilings are there. Then we managed to enter the building when the ceilings were being taken off. So the whole building was completely naked. There was no carpet, no linings, only the windows at the far end. You were in a building which, when it's empty, as you know, it looks smaller. So you were able to see the whole thing and observe quite significant cracks here and there. So the ceilings have been taken off, and you can see this level of damage. We are going to discuss if that was good or bad, but you know now that the reaction is for how bad that damage was in terms of requirements to demolish the building. Actually, the building did very well. Problem is that it did very well because it was designed according to the standard way of doing things, which is the building is going to preserve lives, as you know now. It's not going to preserve himself from being damaged. It's like the car crashing that we are always using as an example. Problem, in the city, green, yellow, red, most of them, if not all of them, got basically man-made demolished. It was not the earthquake to take them down. It was the requirement of the perceived or the real cost of repairing that caused these, you know, from Sierra to be like that. These are rendering. When I showed it to the international community, they were thinking, really? We didn't know about that. Say, okay, look at that. This is not Dubai. Okay? It looks like, it scaringly looks like a desert area where some people are trying to build up a city. Unfortunately, I was trying to explain that the number of cranes in town were probably more for a few months than a big new city coming up in the desert area. But instead of building up, they were taken down. And then in a while, we are going to have a desert area where slowly things are going to grow up again. But it's not going to take a couple of years. It's not going to take probably 5 years. It's going to take quite a while. If you have an idea that there are approximately, at least in the CBD, 1,400 buildings that are being taken down, how many buildings do you think can be built in New Zealand with the current capacity per month? Just make a calculation. I hope that I will be able to see something, and not only my child's son, which is going to be my grandson, going to be able to see the full city flourishing. But there is a possibility to make it happen if obviously there is a plan, which doesn't sound good, right? A plan of making all of this happening has been provided. We're going to see it at the end. So far is the bad news, is a typical, I can tell, it's a good end movie at the end. Bad news, we're going to show it, why not, what is the mechanics behind it, and then we're going to try to give some hopes, because it's the only way to see what happened. Now, why that building, those type of buildings had to be taken down, if they had to be taken down? The current design philosophy, as you know, in earthquake engineering possibly, is to work what we call using the new philosophy in the 60s, new, when compared to previous, obviously, approach, was to take the building and consider the building as a structural system like a chain. Within the building, you have weak points. My weak points are my ankle. I broke them a few times. I already know it. Okay, you can have a knee, you can have something. You do know that the weak points are the connection, don't you? It's much harder to break the leg, it can happen, than to break the connection, the hip and the connection. Same thing in a building. The connection between a beam and a column, the column and the floor, all the possible connection at the weakest point. Now, if we could make that weak point not brittle, but ductile, which is able to basically stretch and open and move and rotate, then we are creating a ductile system. Because the weakest link of the chain, if you pull a chain, the chain will break depending on what is the weakest link. It doesn't matter how strong I'm over here, my ankle are also my weakest link. And if I don't protect them, it doesn't matter how strong I've been built up in the gym, I'll always be breaking up my ankles. So what has been created in 1960 is a theory for which the designer will go to create a fuse within the structure. It's nothing different from what we know as an electrical fuse. The electrical fuse is something which is sacrificing itself to allow the whole system to break off, but in a way that is controllable instead of uncontrollable. What does it mean? If we have a building and we need to try to create a fuse, the fuse should not be my ankle, should not be my leg. If I break a leg of an ankle, I'm going to have a pancake and a full collapse. But if I try to get that damage, I need to have something giving up, okay? Something has to give up. If I get that damage into my beam-to-column connection, so my arm, and my legs are still standing, it's not a big deal. So this has been the revolutionary concept in earthquake engineering in 1960 called the capacity design, creating a hierarchy of strength such that the fuse is exactly where we want. Great, but that's what happened. Exactly what needed to happen, but you have many of these damage within this beam-to-column connection over here, all the way up in the PwC building. You try to look at the cost of repairing, and the cost of repairing is quite significant, in a way too high, so the car has to be changed. Now, honestly, there are reasons for which many buildings have been demolished in the city, and the question, I leave it to you, the answer. The question is, what if the insurance scheme in New Zealand was not one of the highest in the world? What if people did not have a backup plan to get a new car, 70% of new car, instead of trying to repair a building? Would the city have been demolished to the same extent? International colleagues have asked me, and other colleagues here, who's cheating the insurers? I say, sorry, I don't understand. What do you mean? Who are the engineers cheating the insurer and telling them that it cannot be repaired? And I say, no, they are very good engineers, actually. So let me understand how does it work. So it did happen that in few conversations, you might wonder that the clients are not happy, sorry, the tenants are not happy to live in that building. They're scared. Okay, fair enough. But where is the business case here? They're scared they are not going to rent. But if you repair it, maybe someone will. The engineer is basically being told by the client that the business is not there. So the engineer will not take the risk of signing off, which is good. The client will take the cash settlement to run away and build where she wants, which is a good thing. What is for the insurer? So we were around the table, again, that's something that should not be recorded, but in a building for a second opinion, and after looking around and looking at the second opinion, I just said, great, now let's go to see the damage here. They said, that's it. What do you mean? You can repair it, you know that. Of course we can, but the insurer, people said, there's so much about expenditure in litigation to understand how much is to repair up to what it was before the earthquake, or how much is repairing to the 67%, or strengthening. And they went to court, as you know, with the city council, that the cost of doing that litigation was too much trouble, and it was a win-win-win situation to actually get the buildings now. Now, initially, I thought that was quite bad as an outcome. At the end of the day, let me go back. At the end of the day, you start thinking, hold on, and you know now the frame. I have a picture of it. You know about the frame. Because in a positive news, because many of these buildings came down, now you can actually have a urban planning again. If we had to live with many mushrooms in the middle of nowhere, it would have been more complicated to design a new city. So let's try to look at the positive news. I don't know if I'm able to convince you, but I don't have to convince you. It's just something that I thought, okay, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe now we have the opportunity to go for a big urban planning, and this time over, the insurance paid the most. This time over, they did. From now on, it's going to be a much different story. From now on, the premium is going to be skyrocketing. It did. The excess is going to be humongous. In fact, there have been cases where a new building owner would have to pay up to 20% of the cost of the building as an excess. So you start wondering, is that worth being insured, or can I do something else? Can I negotiate with the insurance a better deal? What can I offer to the insurers to negotiate a better deal? And that's the discussion that we're going to have today. So that was the great change in earthquake engineering to avoiding many buildings collapsing. Sometimes people are making a comparison with Haiti, with many other countries which are not as developed as New Zealand in terms of earthquake engineering. Now, they had all these type of buildings. That's why thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of victims happen. So New Zealand is in a much better situation because of a younger country, because of earthquake engineering was really up to very, very high levels from the beginning. of the 1900. Napier, unfortunately, helped. And that's what it happened. You get a disaster, you learn from it. But were we surprised to see something like that? Absolutely not. This is a computer modeling, which very sophisticated one. It takes a week and 7 or 9 powerful computers to run. Hopefully it's going to run. There's a beam column connection, the same thing. We are able today, 10 years ago it was not possible to model something like that, to model that type of damage that we would have as a sacrificial fuse in a building. And that's what we are trying now to do, to apply to PwC and Grand Chancellor to see if we were able to predict, if we would be able to predict how many aftershocks it would have taken and the repairing situation and so forth, and trying to look at the repairing techniques. Now, this is again explaining in simple terms that if you want to design something that was capacity design, and if you want to be sure that the arms are breaking, not the legs, then you make the legs stronger than the arms. If you do the other way around, that's going to be very dangerous. And that was the pre-70 way. This is now the post-70 way, and we are now finding that's not enough. We thought that pre-70 buildings, and we is the international community, in the 1990s, pre-70 buildings were found to be vulnerable. Now, 2010, we are discovering that pre-95 buildings are vulnerable. Now, in 2030, 2050, people are going to look at us back and thinking, why they were still designing those things in 2010, which were yet not completely separated from the ground, and we're going to go there. So evolution of technology is such that what we are doing today is the best, it should be the best of what we know, and yet might not be the best in 20 years' time. I want to skip this fast because you have seen it. The earthquake intensity is causing necessarily more and more damage. Fully operational, you're able to use the building right away. Operational, just in a few hours, few days, you're able to enter the building. Life safety, the building is basically very damaged, but you are able to escape from it. Near collapse, life safety is not there. You're not protected life safety-wise. The building is partially collapsed and so forth. Now, what does it mean? The green tag, if you have a small earthquake, happening every 50 years, now everything is upside down in Canterbury, now in Christchurch. Every 6 months, we get something bigger than that. So, and this is telling to the international world what's going on. See, it's going on that this sort of an experimental test. It was something that for the whole world might work, but then when you go locally, you have to calibrate, adjust to the local condition. And the local condition of the seismicity in Christchurch are that the Alpine fault is still waiting. We haven't done anything to the Alpine fault, right? The energy that has been released, that we've been told, has nothing to do with the Alpine fault. The Alpine fault is still going to wait to strike. So don't go home and tell to someone that we are now safe because the big one has happened twice, 3 times, September, December, February, June, December, and again, we don't remember. The Alpine fault is still there. It's going to be the big one. How big is the big one? Big enough, the Alpine fault would have given to us at least a red card, a red tag. That's the expectation of design by code. You design according to the building, you're going to have life safety, and you get a red card. You design a better facility, these are just a normal building, a safe hospital will have to have a much better, for the same level of earthquake, will have to have a much better, obviously, performance, we say it, which is fully operational, okay? Now, I tell you something which is a little bit a stretch. If a new building will behave like that, the bigger the earthquake, the more under a design level earthquake is going to be red tagged, and which means very likely are unrepairable, not repairable, very likely to be not repairable. Who's going to pay for the repairability from now on? The insurance will say, my friend, I told you, I already paid off a lot, so who's going to pay for that? Our friends from Australia? The World Bank? Possibly, the World Bank can, but they would be asking, what did you do to do it before? Did you actually plan for that? And the answer, yes, we did. And the plan was to go for the cheapest options as usual, because that was the first track. Now, I give you some hint of what is going to be released to the to the MB, to the Minister of Building Innovation and Energy. Which is a consultation document on behalf of the New Zealand Society of Earthquake Engineering on what level of retrofit. Now, you remember that is a normal building? These are 67% of a building? These are 33%. Let's just read what does it mean. The 33% of new building standard, would mean that under the moderate earthquake, which is this guy, the very frequent one, that's the moderate earthquake, nothing like the Alpine fault, he is going to be already in trouble, life safety. But if the Alpine fault happens, and we're not going to slow down the Alpine fault saying, by the way, can you excuse us, but we don't have you on the code, we have 1/3 of you. So it's going to happen, we know it. It's out of scale, because it's not nice to show to people that after near collapse, it's going to be what? It's going to be sure? No, it's not going to be surely a collapse, but very, very likely to be. So these are all in probabilistic terms. Look at where you're going. And we know that. So we are suggesting that instead of scoring against an earthquake which does not exist, we should be better scoring against the earthquake that we know very well. New Zealand has one unique opportunity. It sits on a fault, 2 tectonic plates. Italy is not. There are many tiny faults which can happen everywhere. So you're really in trouble. California sits on a well-known fault. There are many others that you don't know about, but at least you should be responsible for designing against the one that is going to happen. Would you be surprised to know that Wellington is sitting on a fault? Would you score against, would you like to know how your house, your family house, your friend's house is going to perform under the Wellington fault or under 1/3 of the Wellington fault? It's absolutely crazy. And this is changing. We have quite interestingly closed-door discussion with the MB. They are receptive. We propose to score against, as you should do, a moderate earthquake as well as a strong one, as the real one, not a strong one, not a major one, not something science fiction, the Alpine fault and the Wellington fault, okay? And to tell to people what is the scoring against it. And then obviously the point will be, as you imagine, it's going to cost a lot. No, it's not true. It's not going to cost that much, especially if, I really need to take the recording off. I've been told that there is an election time soon coming, right? Now, I do remember that democracy means that someone should represent what the people want. So it would be quite appropriate if whoever is going to be the candidates group for that in the next election are going to put as a priority what is the plan for safer New Zealand, without telling you, what do you want? And by the way, you pay for it. I just couldn't stand it. Unfortunately, the problem, probably that's what Jen meant, it's strange that Stefano is the president of New Zealand Society. True, after 26 years, the last one was an Hungarian professor, Professor Paulay, and happens to go to a foreigner accent person, and I tend to be not too much diplomatic in a closed door. So I tend to say, you cannot ask to a private person to pay for something which is a public issue. Because people being killed in a building are not more likely the owners of that building. And even if we don't get killed or we don't get injured, all of us are yet now paying for what happened in Canterbury. Example of my 100% insurance premium, which is being presented in a nice mail saying, by the way, it's not our fault if you pay 100% more than 2 years ago, it's our reinsurance fault. I don't care who's the fault, I just know that I have to pay 100% more. So, is that true that we can't have an incentive from the government, which is we decide as a country that we can have an incentive tax rebate like that happened for insulation, for taking away fireworks instead of heat pumps? If you knew how much it would cost and how much the premium rebate would be to implement a little bit of, not that, but something like that, you would right away saying, I want to cast my vote for someone which is going to present that type of plan. Of course, we are in a free country, so you can do what you want. I'm just providing suggestions. Now, is the best that we can do in the 3rd millennium? The answer is obviously not. But very often people, and that's why I don't really like too much of saying new technology, because it looks like that we woke up one morning, and we, whoever, and we just had this brilliant idea. Okay? Yeah, déjà vu. 3,000 years ago, same people had the same brilliant idea. And now we are having every 30 years, typically research is coming back with a cyclic of brilliant ideas, reinventing the wheel and improving it. So if we get back and see what our ancestors were doing, we did not invent earthquakes, right? And in Greece, for example, they had to deal with earthquakes since a while, and they had a lot of troubles with that. So they had to find, no matter what, you can call it engineering, you can call it a trial and error approach, they had to find a way to survive against earthquakes. Liquefaction, I've shown this picture to some of you. In a dramatic manner, this big rupture of the soil, big shaking, towers falling apart at mid-height, ring a bell. and in different situations has been there for a while. The Romans were doing, I'll go back to the Greek, sorry, first the Greek, and then they went into the Magna Graecia in Italy, the southern part, and they passed on in a way. They were using blocks, marble blocks, you have seen that, I hope. They did not have steel, they did not have energy dissipation devices, they did not have viscous damper, they did not have shape memory alloys, all these fancy things that we are now using today. They just had blocks. They look like concrete. They are just a little bit more precious than concrete, but they are blocks of concrete, quite strong concrete. And the way that these blocks were working under an earthquake, it was basically the temple itself was giving the mass, which is bad, because the mass is driving, but also the weight is stabilizing marble blocks. Try to have marble blocks without something on the top, they will be very loose, right? If you clamp it, it's going to be much stronger. So they found their own way, which is called rocking, moving between a block and the other, to take the building through earthquakes. And so they improve it. How did they improve it? If you take a cut through, these are some of the different places in Greece, including the Acropolis. These are fake reproduction, restoring of the Parthenon, using blocks which are not original anymore, but they're trying to represent the geometry and the mechanical properties. But these are real, from Delphi and from Olympia around, and these from the ancient Acropolis in Athens. You see that thing? Lead. Remember, lead. Just remember. And keys, shear keys, which are working to allow that rocking not to fly around, not to slide around, but to stay there. Remember lead in the center, and remember rocking. And you can see now that the temple is not there for many reasons. People have been going and rubbering things. They've been taking out the lead during between the two world wars. But these type of columns are not as safe as they were when the temple, the roof was on the top. They are loose. They need something, okay? Nowadays, this Olympia, where the Olympics have been created, in Olympia, look at this beautiful segmental construction of marble with a capital on the top. And this is what we are doing now in bridge construction, segmental, in concrete in the United States. We are basically copying, I like to call it the bridge of knowledge. Okay, we are copying, we are learning from what we were doing in the past. Something similar has happened, and that's what we are now doing 2,500 years ago. They don't look as brilliant as Greek temples in a way, but these are the famous new technology that you have been seeing in newspaper or in town. And this is what we're pushing for, trying to explain to people that it's not so expensive. Now, in the past, let's learn from the ancestor again. In the past, also, people were using something today we will be calling post-tensioning. Nowadays, we have big strand, big rods, which are pulling together an element and giving that clamping strength, okay? In the past, the people were using in rubble, these are a very bad type of masonry, okay? It's not a regular masonry, typical stone masonry. Look at this lignum, wooden, but it was nice, lignum beam. Leonardo, end of 1400, the beginning of 1500, was already talking about having a 3D behavior with tie of a building to resist the earthquake. I was trying to find tonight the word. It was absolutely fantastically written. It was talking about trying to have a box behavior, something which is compact. How do you do it? Ties. What you do if you don't tie, you fall out. Did we need to wait for the Christchurch earthquake to know it? Do you remember? Probably you do, because I discovered it. In 1968 or 1960s, in the bylaws, in the council bylaws, it was already written that the parapets should have been fixed. Did you know that? So did you see them being fixed in the last 50 years? After September, did you see them being fixed? Why? It's too expensive. Putting a post, a timber post, like it did happen in Riccarton, unfortunately after what happened in Riccarton Road, it would have been considered too expensive or just not appealing. So it's incredible how humankind tend to forget about obvious things, and again, in how much? Not in 3,000 years, in 30 years, or even in less than that. Now, let me explain you how they were able to tie. They did not have the possibility to pull an element, which is pull a high-strength rod. So what they were doing, they were wetting the timber. The timber was welling, and then they were putting in an anchor, and when the timber is drying, it's clamping in. Unbelievable. And I can show you many other examples that I pulled out of similar type of mechanism where they were trying to clamp the drum of a dome. A dome is pushing, there's a drum. This dome, by definition, push out. That's why you have buttresses. Otherwise, if you don't have them, it doesn't work properly. So if you don't have buttresses properly done, then you have this out of plane of anything on a cathedral of any church if you don't have that type of behavior. So you want to introduce it at any stage. Now, what they were doing to hold on is to use a tie, excuse me, but with this is my class typically. And I'm using the example of the belt. They were using a chain, an iron chain, like a belt, and having nothing else than a mechanism like that, to clamp the drum of the cathedral together. Fantastic. Now, later on, we've been using different materials in that, but this was already there since 600, 700 years. And it's been used for, that's my city in Pavia, that's a facade which is not in, it potentially is okay. Pavia is not in a high seismic region at all when compared to Christchurch. It's like Auckland. Nothing worse than that. And in Pavia, because it's like Auckland, you tend to have all of these things, not only in, interestingly, heritage buildings, but also in normal houses made of masonry and timber floors. This has been then painted, but you see this sort of anchorage? Now, in town, you would remember that in the Art Center, there are fantastic examples of good things like that. And when those fantastic examples were not there, things happened. When they were there could have been two options. One was September was okay, the building survived, the fabric was too strong, and so yet the facade had that, if you don't have a complete capilla tying, then where you tie, you're staying, where you don't tie, you pull out. Fair enough. But there are examples of exceptional good behavior. And how much do you think such a tie would cost? In terms of how many heat pumps? I'm serious. In a house. 1-story, 2-story house. Less. 1.5. 1.5 heat pump will give you, if your engineer is going to tell you more, or contractor, I'm going to chase him down. You tell me. So a few $1,000, $3,000 to $5,000, is going to give you enough tie to avoid the worst. And that's, I think, it would be the mandatory requirement, like the famous double glazing or minimum insulation requirement that we should be asking the country to fix. From there on, fair enough. From there on, after you fix the whole thing, then at a minimum level, then fair enough. Then if you want to have the extra, you pay for it. Okay, I take it. But the minimum should be there no matter what. Now, what is the fancy stuff? Instead of having an iron tie and an iron chain, you can actually have something which is called shape memory alloys. This basilica is St. Francis in Assisi. In 1997, there was a big earthquake. I don't know if you've seen, again, I was trying to find the video. Unfortunately, a bad story. The basilica was very badly damaged. The dome, the drum, part of that collapsed. Then engineers were inside the day after, something within 24 hours. An aftershock happened, and I don't recall if it was 2 people or 1 got killed. And there is this cameraman taking the collapse and the big cloud of dust coming towards him. He just stayed there to try to see what was going on. And anyway, that basilica has been fixed by using complex but available technology, including a tie back, not with iron, but these are shape memory alloys, are new things, which are changing their chemical content. It's something amazing. With the first time, it's 20 years ago when I heard about it, it was unbelievable. And then the cost went down, because that's part of the cost of progress. So these guys are capable, are rods, but they're not timber wooden rods, or they're not steel rods. After being stretched, they remember where they are, they come back. Not because they are elastic, they dissipate and they come back. It's something quite interesting. So what happened, imagine, the masonry tends to move during the earthquake. You don't want to hold it too tight in a point, otherwise it's going to break through. You want to have a little bit of a nice and soft jacket, which is uniformly holding on it, right? Uniformly, otherwise it's falling in different places. So what they were doing is to have a multiple number of them creating a capillary restraint which is not stiff, but is able to let it move a bit, but not too much. Okay? These are the basics using new technology of these type of things. Now, look at this bell tower, which could have been chopped like here. The way of avoiding to be chopped, used in centuries, is to try not to stiffen up that region, otherwise you actually have a bigger problem, but to try to tie down the top part with the bottom part, which is using, again, bars, clamped, using the Greek temple approach. A little bit, not too much, is going to hold it. When it's going to try to move it and shearing off, something is going to pull it back. Now, we are going today. This is the lessons from our ancestors. Do we need to reinvent the wheel? You know about this. What this is? What is this? Women Hospital. You know what this technology is? Base isolation. You know how many buildings are in South Island base isolated? Really? How comes? Are you sure? Why? There should be a reason. Too expensive, right? Must be. Otherwise, everyone will be using it. Or possibly, where are my students here? There are many here. Have you been taught base isolation at undergraduate level? Who said yes? Oh, sorry. We started last year. Fair enough. Fair enough. We started last year, post-earthquake, which means that the whole generation of people that went through one of the top schools in earthquake engineering, because of the length of the degree being 4 years, and because the market asking and requesting to have engineers immediately, they could not go for that specialization that's overseas is typically used, and we're going to launch a Master of Earthquake Engineering at Canterbury University, which will give you information about basics of strengthening. Oh, I didn't tell you. We never taught strengthening at Canterbury University. So who's fixing town? Interesting. The very good engineers who learn the ropes by their own, but just imagine you get the graduates going there, busy time, you don't see the mentor more than a few minutes a week. So there is a need of education, and education comes from you guys, being aware of these things and asking, I don't want to have a oil heater anymore. Can I have a heat pump? And don't give me the one that says making fancy stuff. I don't need fancy stuff. I just need something which is heating. And so the fancy stuff is going to be $5,000, but the $1,500 is really better than nothing. And that type of things is, the more education we get around, the more we agree. Now, I would like to discuss with you why base isolation has not been implemented so far in New Zealand as much as it should have been, because it's a brilliant idea. And the other way of doing base isolation, which is rocking systems. Now, you know the basics. And it's written in, it looks like Latin is Italian. If the ground is moving, we have the concept that someone is pushing us. It's not true. There's no one pushing us. The inertia force is a fake engineering physics way to think about an acceleration multiplied by a mass. Someone is pushing us. In reality, it's still the soil trying to make me fall down. And then the feeling is that I'm going to be pushed. So what we do in the laboratory, because typically it's not we're not able to do shaking table tests. I'm going to show you some of them today. We tend to think that someone is pushing us. But basically, the best type of system in the future is going to be something which is going to take the building completely off the ground when the ground is moving. It's obvious, right? It's just that we're not there yet. And to be there yet, we are going to require something which is going to be already told someone in the range of a magnetic field, electrical magnetic field, which is the same thing that are being used for the bullet train to go faster, take away friction, being pushed up a bit. How much energy is required? If you work properly in the future, there will be a the energy is going to be contained and isolated himself in the building, a sort of a generator, which is able to just give that lift up for 15 seconds. Everything goes underneath, and then you sit down. It's going to happen. You can bet. It is going to happen because if we have it in our brain, means that we have seen it in the past. And I'm going to show you. This is a Greek temple, which is using the rocking system. But Pliny the Elder, we call it Pliny the Old, was writing, translated, it was built on marshy soil. Sounds like Christchurch. Locating charcoal and wool furs under its foundation to reduce its sensitivity to earthquake and avoid locating such a big mass on unstable soil. Unstable soil, not unstable, that's me typing wrongly. Okay? Now, just imagine, not only they were using a protective system which is that rocking, But they were trying to isolate, slide the structure from the soil when the structure was moving 3,000 years ago. And then later on, things have been happening. I have to give you a very bad news. Base isolation, modern base isolation, first of all, base isolation has been invented in the past by the Greek and so forth. They did not have a patenting system, so they could not protect it for 2,000 years. Okay, so everyone was able to use it for a while. Then we do tend to say that base isolation, the modern base isolation has been invented in New Zealand. Almost. I'm sorry. But credit to New Zealand. I'm a proud Kiwi Italian. This was happening as a slider after big earthquakes, which were happening in the southern Italy in the 1800s and the early 1900s in San Francisco. So people will start thinking about, we need to do something better, completely different. That's where the best brains are getting together for a while and trying to get something new. It did not have a success implementation in terms of device. So the credit goes really to Bill Robinson, New Zealand, to create a device which everywhere around the world people manage to use it. Okay? But just look at this device. You're going to see what's happening now. So you know about lead rubber bearing, don't you? Lead rubber bearing is a way to isolate your building from the ground by using rubber, which is soft and goes about, steel inside, lamination of steel, and the lead. Where have you seen the lead? In the center? Sorry, guys, again, comes from over there. The lead in the center, while moving, is able to give you dissipation. The rubber and the steel together are giving you the strength and stiffness and at the same time flexibility, because you need to be able to move. All together became the great invention of one type of isolator. Okay? Now, I'm going to show you a couple of tests coming from Bill Robinson. I have to remember which one has to go first. Now, ideally, the isolation should be basically a slider. If you put yourself on an ice skating, if you will put our building on skates, that building will be going, I have to stop it, so that building would be, the problem is that it's going to possibly be pushed a little bit because of friction and then probably go too far away. That's why lead rubber bearing that gives that energy release or energy consumption, so before going there. Now, I know that we don't believe us, so we're going to have a much better experimental test. That's a fake one. That's a good one. So today we designed the cheap base isolation system, and obviously this is already a rocking system, otherwise we're not going to be able to reproduce the test too many times. So I'm already showing you the next generation of system, which is a non-damageable one, and dissipation on the top. Now, you know that the earthquake is coming not with one frequency. That's one frequency. The earthquake is coming with a combination of frequency, which means, think about a series of waves in the sea, many waves. There are some which are very long, some are very short, and some are very fast. They are all together, that's why it makes a mess. But you could actually look at the sea waves and taking away the one that are coming like that, the one that are coming slowly, okay? So similarly, the earthquake has a lot of frequency inside. And if it tends to hit, look at now, for example, not a big motion. Why? Because there's an amplitude, but the frequency is not the one of the building. If you hit the frequency of the building, you're going resonance, right? So if the earthquake happens to have that frequency as a big content, you start being in trouble. Now, what is happening on this building is that it's not getting damaged because it's made of these rocking systems which are undamageable. Now, we're going to do, I need the help of my assistant. Where is Shaheen? We're going to show you an experimental test where we're putting the most obvious base isolation system, which is a slider. Okay? And this honestly can be a precast tube. Precast piles, right? Can't be. Almost. Don't believe it. Almost. Not too much. Why? I'm going to explain you why. Now, hopefully, that was the biggest shaking that the building was feeling, right? It was the one in resonance. Huh? Yeah, if it doesn't work, it's going to be embarrassing. So, I spent yesterday. I went to pick up my students, saying, "I need some help." Huh? But then I enjoyed so much doing. I went to start doing things. It was so much fun. So if it doesn't work, we're going to redo it. Look at that. Happy? I stop it because... Now, just imagine that. And obviously I can play with the frequency, try to see if I can make it in trouble. Look at that. Now, we are going to discuss how much does it cost. And you can bet that New Zealand is going to be the one using all of that. Now, there are different ways of doing it, and we wanted to play around. You remember lead rubber bearing? Look at these fantastic things. You can use, you can't use. You can use engineering solutions coming from the tires of your car. Engineer solutions. Don't try to do it yourself. But we are really looking at, okay, now I want to show them on purpose. There are two options, has to be designed. We tried like that, and then we said, no, it's too stiff. And so look at that. Now we're going to put in the stiff way, it's stiff, and this, because it's taller, is softer, okay? So just to check the design. If the design is not done properly, and of course we did not do numbers, that's the trial and error thing. We did it, it was working, but we were not so happy. How's that? Okay, hold on, we can do better. Now, if we make it softer, because you design the stiffness of it, you have to design it, okay, to just work properly. Now we make it softer, so we put it higher. It's a softer type of rubber, if you wish. There's no lead inside, but to make it fall. Okay, try, go. It's already stable over there. It's a bit unstable here. It's working much better. Okay? So the point will be, how can we make this obvious solution working? Working without spending too much money. Now, in my slide here, I want to show you something which is, we have done the experimental test. This is a very expensive one, as you can see. That's what New Zealand, take it, stay there with me. What you think we can afford, this is something that has been done by B. Robinson on a better scale. Let me just show you here, if I can. Just to give you an idea, these are recursive. Okay? It depends. The biggest shaking table in the world in Japan, the people are testing a full-scale building. This is not isolated. Just check the top floor shaking, and you make the earthquake. It's a bit, when you go to the middle, it's going to shift. It's going to start basically here. Type of damage, because the building is still there and there was not an acceleration. Do you have an idea of what are the acceleration in a building? They're growing with the height that you can go to. Now, the earthquake was designed in the code, was meant to be 0.2 G. I'm 100 kg, I should have felt on the ground 20 kilos on this direction. That was supposed to be the earthquake. But the earthquake decided to go for 0.6, 0.8 G, okay? Now, you move in the height, you might reach 2 Gs or 3 Gs, which means that suddenly I have to hold 300 kilos smashing me against one side and smashing me against the other. Or having, there are examples on the shaking table in Japan, basically big cabinets flying at high speed, tenth of kilos they are working on, just imagine the detailing, a copy machine. A copy machine coming against you at that speed can basically kill people. Okay, just to tell you the thing. So there are advantages of doing this base isolation system. We can see a little bit here. Let me try to give you now an example of what happens if you do use there it is. It's already going. So just check the movement over here. And basically, that's it, it's rolling around. Has to be, you remember that? Approximately, instead of being moving, is now isolated. The best, again, in the future would be something which is coming over, a little bit magnetic field lifting up, the earth is finishing coming down. Okay, we are trying to go there, and right now it's not that far away. So, now I'm going to fly through, because you're getting tired. I have to find my presentation back. There it is. Okay, now, how can we make it cheaper? Because the whole thing is, we understand it is the best way, or one of the best ways so far. There are better, they can be improved, but the basic base-isolated car can be improved in terms of cost, and it has been proven in the restoration of temporary accommodation, which is never going to be temporary, for 18,000 people after the earthquake in L'Aquila in 2009. The base isolation can be cheaper if you use, basically, so obvious, once you see it, the foundation, the basement for something, car parking. Someone is making a lot of money on car parking, don't they? Now, if you can have your car parking, you need a basement, you need a raft foundation. Either you go down with 25 meters of piles, and you need the basement foundation no matter what. So why don't you use the basement foundation for car parking? Naturally, you need to have columns, so the only cost will be the cost of inserting that element. That's it. Compared to what? That's the problem. People have been comparing base isolation against a building which has everything meshed, including damage over here. The equivalent building of base isolation is not a bunker. If you are designing a bunker, the level of acceleration is going to be humongous. It's going to stay, but in a hospital, if you design a bunker, the acceleration is going to break all your machines, acceleration sensitive. You see that? So there's not really a trade-off, and that has been proven using what? The Italian patent, not anymore a patent, which is a slider. Okay, you can use lead rubber bearing, or you can use a slider. What is the way of avoiding the slider to just fly through? Look at that concave curve. Basically, you're trying to move, and you're using the weight to slow down your building. When it's going up, the weight itself is trying to push you back, so it can't fly away. Obvious, right? Once you see it, of course it is. It is a re-engineering version of the Greek temples, if you wish, which were on charcoal, and on the Viscardini concept of two concave around a cylinder, basically. Now, why not a cylinder? Please be sure that you don't do that, because the earthquake will not come in one direction. We'll have two directions, plus the third one, and the third one is quite a critical one for base isolation system. So you need basically not something like that, but something like a double cylinder, which becomes a sphere. Obvious. A sphere underneath your building, with something holding on a bit, is going to be the best isolation system that can be done. Now, these are real stuff, rendering of apartment buildings. They costed, at the end of the day, not more than what a typical new building would have costed, because the value of the car parking underneath is a big one. Now, people have been saying that base isolation costs a lot because you have to leave a gap. Honestly. Because you're losing half a square meter, or multiply by a lot, for you can't sell that half a square meter. You can't sell half a square meter, but you're going to make a 50% higher rents, and you don't pay the insurance premium at the same level. So dwellings designed in any way, just to show you real stuff, these are coming on as nice sliders, and these are real villages, which were meant to be temporary housing, not bad. As a temporary housing, how much the cost? Equal to market cost. Done in between April and November, 6 months, 9 months, whatever it is, before Christmas time, because November in L'Aquila becomes a very cold time, okay? Now, let's move it. I want to show the model rocking system. It's a type of isolation. It does not happen underneath, it happens inside. It's not giving you exactly the same level of performance, but is in a way less expensive. I want to go through all of that. Test the mechanism, goes back and forth, you've seen over there. How does it work? Prefabrication, elements are precast, combined together by high-strength steel, okay, the famous lignum wooden timber beam, which is now using a high-strength steel, nothing else. And because I tie together, this can become as strong as I want. But should the earthquake decide not to read the code again, I don't break it. I just go for the rocking. So it's stiff as much as it needs, and then it takes away the energy. By doing what? Fusing. It's like, bah. And this concept of bah has been used as you think about your air pump for your tire. This air pump can actually be used diagonally over here, holding on, release. Holding on, release. So there are many things that you can't just imagine being developed, and they don't cost too much because they're becoming simpler and simpler. If you think about a wall, and I need to go through, you can have the same. This is going to be more complicated because there should be a floor restraining it, okay? We agree on this. It's too strong. A wall, it is definitely a wall, is a very strong system. If I should be trying to untie it. Anyway, the concept is that you're trying to move it, and it's not breaking, it's just lifting. By the time that, say, imagine if someone is pushing you, think about it, I do it with my students, you hold on, and then if you just lift up, the guy is coming to you, right? The force is not entering to your body, you're cutting, you're fusing. You decide how much you want to come in, get in. If my ankle cannot take that force, I'm going to lift. I will not try to break my ankle. There's no point of trying to stiffen up and spend a lot of money to make it stronger, right? As simple as that. So it's nothing else than what you're doing. If someone is pushing you back and forth, you are putting your legs far away, because if you stay like that, it's going to be quite unstable, okay? And you try to use as much as you can, and you're lifting up, and you're moving, you're being articulated, okay? So not any different from human body design. Stay with me, all the way. You don't like it anymore, do you? Older way, which we call new, rocking temples. Ah, not bad. So you can call it older way. There are some people that I am a traditional, I study classical studies, so I prefer to call it the old good way, which is not the 19-something. That was great, but this is better. Okay, so the old good way, the really old good way would be amazing. Okay, so what are we doing next? We don't like to think that something is going back and forth, and then at the end of the day, we have some steel elements sacrificing themselves and breaking up. So what we've been developing, and it's really something that we have done here, is you see these guys? Look at how expensive they are. A piece of rebar, of reinforced concrete, you take it 12 meters, you chop it in, and you create a fuse, the electrical fuse. Then you insert in a tube, a very expensive tube. And then you put some grout and a very expensive sand and water and cement. You lock it in and you plug it in. How much does it cost? Give me a number. A little bit more. Okay, that's it. We are in the range of, we've been looking at different solutions, which are going to be in different arrangements. They cost between $20 and $100, okay? And you have to think about it, they are replacing the effort of someone, a workmanship. The cost per hour is going to go to the sky, right now. So a human doing the caging of your steel and grouting the concrete around is still going to be expensive. So these are becoming cheaper, and I don't like to know, you know that I don't like cheaper anymore. So in the broken English dictionary, cheap is not there anymore. We call it low expensive. So it's low expensive. It's less expensive, and it's almost a no-brainer because it's the only element, sacrificial fuse, that after an earthquake you would have to change. So my typical other joke is that the future of earthquake engineering, which is we are living what we thought it was the future. The earthquake has accelerated that travel to the future, so we are already in that era. Internationally, you cannot imagine what people are thinking. They say, oh my gosh, you're really doing it. Because we are still thinking about trying to convince someone, say, yeah, we were doing it even before the earthquake. Let's give credit to New Zealand as a small dynamic country. Before the earthquake, there was a situation like that in place. After the earthquake, everyone, you are going to be able to go to the supermarket, we say the seismic shop, and buy your extra small, medium, large, on a... It is It's like I'm just using the dress code, nothing else. And it's going to be on a discount, because then this is going to become not the fancy one. The fancy is going to be a viscous damper, which is costing more. So you're going to buy, never, you're buying the new release computer, do you? Or sometimes you can. We can't afford. So we tend to take the last good release, 6 months ago one. So buy that on a discount. And buy many, and sharing with people. And at the end, after an aftershock, you're going to just possibly have to go there. Remember PwC, smashed? You're going to go there, ceilings away, or possibly, excuse me, just imagine that this can be accessible. You can actually have a panel that you can open up, and you can change by yourself, with an engineer supervising you possibly. Okay, from theory to practice. Stay with me, I know that I'm taking a lot of your time. It did happen already. This type of technology, rocking of that nature, the tallest building using this technology is a 39-story, 39-story building in San Francisco, not exactly a low seismic region, right? Downtown San Francisco, 39-story building, going up very fast and quick. I, of course, have to show Italy, right? Again, and in Italy is a very delicate thing, because the type of concrete is a cast in situ concrete. People are using prefabrication for industrial plants, not for this type of buildings. And now, why it's happening? Only because it costs less. Let's be honest. It's fast, quality control, you get elements already in place, they are prepared in the factory, so you can build very quickly and fast, so someone is making a profit of it. The point is who? Not the engineer, not the architect. The owner depends. If it's a development where someone has a contract for everything, they will see the advantage, but there are many advantages on it. Argentina, Costa Rica, they are so advanced over there on this technology. New Zealand, look at this. So, luckily enough, it's not the end. New Zealand picked up, and we have obviously pushed a lot for it. In 2008, one of the most recent but best technology featuring the famous, what we call plug and play. You see here? These are the plug and play that can be replaceable in Wellington University, Vic Uni, okay? They can be replaced, they can be painted. That's how they look when they are nicely painted. They are a feature, architecture feature within the building. There is a cafe in Victoria University where people are sitting in, and there is a video and showing that feature. People are feeling safer, if you wish. New Zealand, you know Caledonian Street, the Southern Cross Hospital endoscopy building is using this technology, that type of wall system. After the earthquake, it was used as an emergency system, as an emergency building, because it was operational, basically. So it could work right away with the theaters right away. And the cost of that, I know exactly the numbers, it was slightly lower than the equivalent technology designed prior to the change. The client said very clearly, fine with me if you want to change, it shouldn't cost me a single penny more. Then obviously after the earthquake, the client, Southern Cross, said, we take care of our patients, that's why we really pushed hard. And I was saying is the truth is always coming up. Anyway, so everyone was happy and everyone has been thinking about, that's great, can we do it in a different way, can we do it in timber? Let's fly through. You have seen things in timber, how does it work? The revolution in timber is to basically think about doing it the same way with engineered wood, a strong wood that is available now in New Zealand. Looking on the left-hand side, that's the rocking in a slow motion. Look at the right-hand side, you don't damage it. Basically, you have these fuses that are the only one that possibly after the earthquake you might need to change, otherwise you don't. I fly through how we call it, pre-stressed laminated timber, we call it press lam, that's a technology. Big building was tested in the lab, we couldn't break it, we made it become a building at university. That was the test video, which I will not show it to you. It's been located, moved from the laboratory to a different place within the university, a few hundred meters, but you have to do the whole thing, unpack, repack up, create a new foundation, and this building has gone through the earthquake in February, in June, and so forth. And that is the CEO of the company that is sponsoring. You have seen this, I hope? You haven't? No? Oh, you must see it. Sorry, guys. You need to see it.
Down you folly. The engineer said, a place this big, you gotta have steel. We said, steel? That's not Samoan. We want wood. But it has to be strong like steel. Strong, eh? and earthquake-proof, fire-resistant.
That's a pass!
And it had to look good too. Awesome folly, eh?
Wood, traditional, spiritual, cultural, and now with a university degree. Learn about it at nzwood.co.nz.
You know, you're trying to keep things under control. They go off control when the media are involved, but that was great. And that was before the earthquake, well before the earthquake. So things are happening after, at that time already. And from theory to practice, let's fly through buildings which are now using MIT, Nelson, Marlborough Institute of Technology. Before the earthquake, 2008, is the first building in the world using a University of Canterbury created Kiwi technology. So let me recap a bit, because just to clarify. Base isolation, the modern type, the device that everyone has been using around the world, Kiwi. Viscardini has invented, fair enough, but Kiwi. Rocking system, I didn't tell you. This concept has been created in California by Professor Nigel Priestley, PhD student at Canterbury University in the Civil Engineering Department of Park and Paulay, and lecturer at Canterbury University, then flying to the United States and making San Diego one of the most important universities in earthquake engineering, better than Berkeley, which was really the thing. So, all of that. Timber, University of Canterbury spin-off company, for which we make no money, for just if you're wondering, because we had the brilliant idea of being convinced to give for the famous $1, which I still have to see, for use in New Zealand and Australia for free. So because of that, there are buildings up happening in Nelson. This is a sort of a dissipator type. Look at what the Nelson building looks like. You enter the building, and you're talking to the people who are living in the building, and the new way of doing earthquake engineering is to show the power of what you spent your money for, or what you did not spend your money with. And people you're entering there, they know exactly what they're talking about. We pretended not to be who we were, just asking, excuse us, we heard that this is a seismic room. Oh yeah, it's a seismic room. So what is the seismic stuff? Oh, you see over there? Those guys are going to, this one here, are going to dissipate they were using the terminology, dissipate the energy of the earthquake. Wow. And what are these doing? Oh, these are tendons. They are recentering the system. My gosh, what is recentering? What does it mean? Oh, after the earthquake, the system will not be leaning like the leaning tower, but it's going to be straight, so no damage. And what are these cables? Oh, we are monitoring the building. Really, you're monitoring the building. Why? What for? Oh, to understand how the buildings behave during the earthquakes, like a patient. That was real people spreading the word about what new technology is. And so that was absolutely fantastic as a breakthrough. Carterton Event Center, there's an event center up north using that. Office in Brent using the same thing. Post-tension is going through. Look at here how nice it could look like. You can show and not show. Mass University Wellington, you're going to see that we need something at University of Canterbury in the rebuild. Italy, Europe, one of the most conservative place to get actually timber for multi-story. Look at this beautiful rendering. It would have been all timber. Typical of Italian political situations, as you know, that they are changing from right to left every right to right to center. So what happened is that we basically won the competition to build a office building, and then the local council changed, and so the new council said, thank you very much, that's your award. And the building? Oh, it's their project, the previous councillors, so obviously we don't give credit to them, you understand that. So of course we understand that, but it's awful. Anyway, Vision 2050, New Zealand, what is going to be looking like, 2050. Before having the buildings that you now know in town, we've been trying to look at what, this is August 2011, okay, look at the city, check around here, August 2012, looking from PwC. That's it, the good story. Now, something is going to happen, a new, brand new city with new technology is going to be there. You guys are going to drive it. Don't make people choosing for the cheap and nasty and only apparently less expensive things, which we are going to pay all of us for many other years. So there were a few rendering of what war and money, what town could look like with retail, offices, work. Look at this. Can be concrete, can be timber, can be steel, I'm going to show you. And you remember that temporary housing that I've been showing? The idea was, oh, actually we'd like it. Green area, surrounding space, Apartments, that's quite a flashy style in a way, and, but it can be done, offices. And now, final 5 slides, concrete San Telmo becoming what? Becoming a new San Telmo, which is base isolated, and rocking on the top. Fantastic. The combination of the two, okay? Concrete columns, San Telmo is going to use concrete columns, let me go back, and timber post-tension beams. Base isolation, concrete columns, timber post-tension beams. And what about the flooring system? Yes, it is concrete steel. So all the materials have been used, okay? Because it makes sense. Victoria Street, you might have seen it in Merit building. That's what it looks like when you go there. There's been a humongous amount of people walking through, and these are the plug-and-play dissipators, which are going to be exposed. The people can see them, they're happy, the architects, the tenants, the owner are happy to see these painted nicely within the building as a seismic resisting system. Trimble, a navigation company, Mainzer was the contractor, so you can guess it's on hold, but everything is ready to go. It's basically there waiting to be lifted up. And these are frames, beams and columns already connected and then are going to be pulled up for a big building. Steel, we can do it in steel. We can make that rocking happening in steel. How does it look like? Think about concrete, make it timber. What would steel look like? That's it. And in fact, this is it. Now, this is a little bit fancy thing. There are viscose damper as well as the plug-and-play combined together to get the most robust, so far possible system that we can have in mind. And it was coming from a big shaking table in Japan again, e-defense. We modified it, we improve it, obviously. Not you never stay still. In practice, and the slide is finishing saying that you need what to make all of this happening? A willing client, or a good willing friend of the client, which is suggesting the client not to make a mistake. A design team prepared to innovate, fair enough, but it's going to be driven by bottom up. It's going to be us telling to someone, don't give me the old bad way, give me the best old way, otherwise I'm not very happy about. Research and development are fundamental. We are testing in the lab pieces of buildings which are being designed in town. It's the best type of combination of research, which is not a smoky one, but is applied for the reconstruction of the city. We just need a bigger lab, that's another story. A capable contractor, obviously, who's doing the construction needs to believe that it's simple, and the first time when you do things, they're not simple if you don't know what you're doing. The slide is finishing saying that a lot of victims have been, research victims, I don't want to use that term, have been working hard in the last really few years to do all of this, and during the earthquake, we received a lot of people from international missions, and all of these are people that we can leverage on. Their brain, their technology, their laboratories are basically our best friends right now, and the way to make it more formal, you might have heard, you're going to hear in a few days' time, in 2 weeks' time we're going to launch a major endeavor, which is going to try to make New Zealand up to that level where it always was, one of the best seismic country in the world. There are 4 schools of earthquake engineering. United States, Europe, Japan, and New Zealand. United States, California, there's a big center called Pacific Earthquake Engineering Research Center, a big consortium of research lab. U Center in Pavia, my city, is one that is now the top European school in earthquake engineering. In Japan, close to the big shaking table, there's a disaster prevention research institute. We are now signing a memorandum of understanding with the 3 top centers in the world, and we is UCQC, University of Canterbury Quake Center, which is going to have a memorandum of understanding with the best in the world and with the best national-wise, which is University of Auckland. So they're our friends in a way. They're not all the time rival. We can't afford to have a rivalry over here, but we are doing in a nice way what Peer Berkeley is doing. Is a Californian consortium, but the headquarters is in Berkeley. We want to have a national consortium with the headquarters being where it deserves to be, which is Canterbury University. Fair enough? Thank you for your patience.